How are the schools selected?
Well, in the first instance of the 4, they were selected on the basis of an application process screened through a blind process, as I understand it, and then reconstituted, meaning that everybody lost their jobs in that school, principals, teachers, support staff, and then they got to pick and start all over again. Subsequently, through the process, and they were all elementary schools. They went from 4 to 8, and now we're up to 17. Subsequently, there have been some other things, and they've not all been reconstituted. As an outside consultant, you remember, I make no decisions, I just bring to bear, you know, this, you make the choices, but here are the implications. For me, the important thing is to get a cross-section of the district. We want elementary, middle, and high schools. We want small schools, we want large schools. We want the diversity ratio and everything else. And we want geographic distribution, things of that kind. Because the reason being, if we're trying it in small, we want to see if we're going to scale up. We don't want any surprises at that point. So more recently, we've been trying to look at rounding up the complement. So that last, Jeff was the first high school, Keller is the first middle school, and now we've got a second high school because we need those examples. When we first started, we did elementary, middle, high school, and special ed. And I was advised to pick, pick elementary schools, because if the elementary will do it, then you might get the middle schools and high schools to eat, because they're feudal barons, they're more powerful. For leadership, pick the best people. And I said, no. For our laws, our principals were tenured in the building and members of the teachers union. So what we did for leadership, we picked 2 principals out of 7 whose reputation was that they were somebody's gift here on earth. 3 were down the middle, and 2 of them, my God, if I woke up in the morning and they were gone. I had a petition of 325 names to get a principal in one of these schools where the community was going to get me. And I picked him. And you know why I picked him? Because this fellow just knew enough to keep his head above the water. He was playing games. God, he was an entrepreneur in an environment in which there was nothing entrepreneurial. And so I wanted to see what would happen. To show you how behavior changes, 2 years later, this person got promoted to a job. He was in his late 50s that normally he would have never achieved. Over 600 people showed up to honor him leaving. And you may say, well, of course, not true. They renamed a part of the school in his honor. They had his portrait painted, and he was a saint when he walked out of there. And his whole life changed. And the only note to what I'm saying, and it's a long answer to your question, eventually, I would hope that as we would expect, as our county would expect, because my job is to work myself out of the business. Is I would hope that as the district expands, they would gain enough of an experience so that at some point they could go district-wide.
Okay, one more question.
Let me just, I neglected to mention this, and I apologize for this. Comfortable leadership is a contradiction in terms. In being the superintendent of this district, I can tell you, Walt's probably heard everything from every good side. One of the things is, though, it's taken the initiative to see that these schools start. Secondly, there's been board support for this initiative. And this will not stay where it is. It will either keep moving forward each year, or eventually it will wane. Because you cannot operate the 2 systems side by side without an awful lot of friction, which is what we're enjoying right now.
Thank you.
Last question.
All right. Being a former school board member back east 10, 15 years ago, the best education I've had my whole life is being on the school board for 4 years, 1 term. They wanted me to run for another term. I said, you've got to be kidding me. And I said it back then, and we said it, we were in a minority, back then you were a political affiliation, we were in a minority party. We were outruled 6-5 a lot of times. And I said back then, you will never have quality education in this country until you stop the social promotion, which someone alluded to, 40% could not do what they needed to do to be able to read. That's pathetic. And the other thing was that until you have school choice in this country, I don't believe all the efforts you're doing are fantastic, and that's a start. But until you have school choice in this country, I don't believe you'll have quality education. Competition is what's needed in business. We have this in business. We should have that in schools. Does somebody address that, please?
Well, if I might, very briefly, and remember, every community has its own opportunities with their own problems. The district that I was in, and I've only talked about the one part, but choice was part total freedom. When I left the district in the new areas, outlying areas, there were about 30 schools that we could not keep up with the pressure, so everybody was guaranteed space in there. But 180 schools, total enrollment, everybody is going every which way. About over a third of the elementary kids get to choose, leave, don't attend their neighborhood school. At the secondary level, over half the kids, they pick their programs. And schools, in a friendly way, I'm going to say, because there are ways to do this, they are competitive, and people get to choose their schools. And you're right, it introduced a whole new dynamic of schools responding to their communities because parents could vote with their children's feet. And you're right, but you've got to be careful how many of these you can do at any one time and how you can implement it.
And an empowerment school is an open zone, so any student can, from anywhere, attend an empowerment school.
Okay, thank you everybody. Mike, you guys.
I'd like Mrs. Jansen, just give her 2 minutes to comment on our manuals, okay?
Mrs. Jansen is the president of the Clark County School Board.
Thank you, and I promise I won't take your time, but I have to address that because in the Clark County School District as a whole, we have somewhat of a choice program already through our magnet programs and some of the other schools are there. So there's a lot of choices in the district. I will tell you that the school board right now, and was working with the superintendent to look at possibility. It's much more difficult than you would think, especially in a school district like ours, to do that, especially with the zoning and the overcrowdedness that we've previously had. We have somewhat of an opportunity right now because our growth has leveled out. Last year we had 1% growth. We're anticipating a 1% growth this next coming school year. We really won't know until they walk in the door at the end of August who's going to show up at our schools. But that discussion is ongoing because we do believe, and the superintendent as well believes, that competition is the key to making sure that that's successful. So again, it's not going to be an overnight resolution, but it is in the conversation.
Just to wrap up, if you check that packet, the back page will give you information on who you can contact. All the school board members are listed, the leaders in the state senate and state assembly are listed, and it also gives you information on how to contact your individual legislator. More importantly though, Beacon as a group, we have probably about 25 to 30 members right now, and it's all small business people who are concerned about this issue. And what we need from all of you to help these people get empowerment pushed forward, and as Mike said, it'll either increase or it'll go away based on who ends up getting their program pushed through. And our idea is to create a coalition of business people who can speak with one voice through Beacon to tell the superintendent and the board that we support them in their efforts in empowerment. Now, if what you've heard today is something that you believe can help the Clark County School District, I encourage you to go to the Beacon website. It's beaconnevada.com. After we get the video from today's presentation up, the website will be up. Give us about 3 days to do that, and you'll be able to join Beacon. If it's only just your name, that will help us, because the more people we have as members of Beacon that support our cause, the more power we'll have when we go to the legislator to explain to them why we want this to go forward. Or if you want to make a financial contribution to help us pay the bills to do what we're doing here, that would be possible too. But the most important thing is to educate yourself about empowerment. That's the whole point of today's program. We started out talking to people, and we realized that even though there's 17 empowerment schools, hardly anybody knew what they were unless their child went to one. There's also a list of the schools there. So anything you can do to support Beacon, we would greatly appreciate. Thank you for your time.